We're talking about solving really tough equations. Yesterday we did just graphing, and I want to make sure you can do that first. Let's say you had 2 absolute value of x plus 5 is equal to 10. That should be a pretty easy one for you to solve. So you'd graph the left side, graph the right side, see where they cross. So put in this on your calculator, y is equal to that, and y is equal to that. And if you forgot where absolute value is, you can almost find it under catalog, which is, I'll bring this up so you can see it here. No, you have to press a series of 3 buttons. So actually the shortest route is to go to catalog. But I'll tell you where it is. It's under math. There's a math button. It's got a bazillion, well, it's a math calculator for Pete's sake, so you'd think there'd be a math button. Or math seems a little too general even, but anyway, if you want to do absolute value this way, you go to math, the arrow over to number. But my point is that every single thing that's under the math button is also under the catalog button. And that one starts with A, so absolute value is really easy to find there. So if I go to catalog, that's down here. Okay, so absolute value looks like that. So would you please put in 2 times the absolute value. I'm going to just put in absolute value, and then I can always move back over here and insert 2. There, 2 times the absolute value of x plus 5. X plus 5. There we go. And then I get out of my absolute values. You guys should probably put n parentheses if you have the older operating system. And then, why do I have, like, okay, I just hadn't changed the screen. That was weird. Okay. There. Okay, so now it's ready, and now I can hit graph. And remember, if you graph it and you use a weird zoom, it can look weird. Like, you can not even see them crossing. Maybe you have zoom 6 going, which is the normal zoom. And you can barely see them crossing there at the top. So maybe you do a zoom out, or maybe you do a zoom fit. Zoom 0 is a good zoom. Just try a bunch of the different zooms and see what it does to your picture. There's zoom fit. You can at least see where they both cross. How about zoom 5? Zoom 5 is the square. That's the one where the x and the y axis are numbered the same. If you graphed on graph paper, this is what it looked like. Because actually zoom 6 is really kind of messed up. That's the normal zoom. But the spaces on the x-axis are bigger than the spaces on the y-axis are. So your picture's a little distorted from what it should be. And it always has been. So zoom 5 is more like if you graphed it on graph paper, what it would look like. See how the V is kind of steeply tilted? That's because of the 2 in front. It's got twice the slope of a normal V shape. Okay, anyway, and then hopefully you know to go second, calculate. The intersection is number 5. And the first curve, it's on the first curve. Just hit enter. It's on the second curve. Hit enter. And then guess, that means get the little spider right near one of them, and I am near one of them. And then so I hit enter, and my first one's at 0. But there's another answer that also works. Second, calculate the intersection. Okay, I don't know what's happening. Second, calculate. There we go. The intersection is number 5. And then I want to go first curve. My smartboard's freaking out here. Second curve. And then the... I'm sorry. I'm having smartboard issues. It's not really me. First curve. Enter. Second curve. Enter. Now, guess. Now I move the little mouse, or spider I usually call it, over to where they intersect, and then I hit enter, and my other intersection point is at -10. Okay, raise your hand if you got 0 and -10 for your answers. Okay, good. So now, what would we have to do if we had to solve this without a calculator? That's kind of what we do today. And I think you'll see with the one I'm going to show you in a minute here that these problems can take a lot of paper. So get out your notebook and get a fresh piece of paper, because we're going to probably use it all up on 2 problems. Seriously. And this is how you know you're in a tough class sometimes. This is how long does it take to finish the problem. Nothing we're going to do is super tough, but there's lots of steps. Question? Okay, I can help you with that later. All right, on this one, to start it, I would just divide by 2 on both sides. And then I'd have, because why? Because I want to get this alone. And then I can fix the absolute value thing. Absolute value of x plus 5 is equal to 5. And then I split it into 2 parts. Do you remember that what's underneath my scribble here has to either be 5 or negative 5? Right? That's how those work. So then, if I undo my scribble, I can say x plus 5, the thing that was under the scribble, is equal to 5. Or x plus 5 is equal to negative 5. And this one, subtract 5 from both sides, becomes x equals negative 10. And this one, subtract 5 from both sides, becomes x equals 0. Both answers work. If I put a negative 10 right there, smartboard freaking again. If I put a negative 10 right here, it would work. Or if I put a 0 right here, it would work. All right. So now let's do a serious problem. Well, okay, I don't think you're quite ready yet. I want to make sure you get the 3 kinds. I just did an absolute value where you split it into 2 parts. How about this? Do you know how to fix this kind? How do you get rid of that squared? Take a square root. If I do a square root of both sides, square root, then I get x plus 3 is equal to square root of 10. So I subtract 3 from both sides, right? What did I do wrong? You can tell by my tone of voice that I didn't do something right there. You remember? If I do square root on both sides, I need absolute value, so I need to do both sides. I need to do this thing. X plus 3 equals root 10, or x plus 3 equals negative root 10. Remember? If it's a square root on both sides, you bring in absolute values. So the ones that are squared turn into absolute value problems. All right. Justin, you'll need one. All right, so the next thing. You sometimes encounter things that are square rooted. Sometimes you encounter things that are squared. And sometimes you encounter things that are absolute values. How many of you are confident you absolutely get that right? Raise your hand if you are. Okay, good. How many of you are confident you could get that right? Okay. And just for those that aren't, you get when you do the square root of both sides, it's just going to turn into the other problem. Now it splits to 2. Okay. And then there's only one other way you can do it. Okay, we did the absolute value kind. We've done, have you done any of these yet? Do you know how to fix that? Yeah, you just got to get rid of a square root, so you square both sides. And a lot of people think this brings in absolute values. It does not. I square this side, I square that side. There's no absolute values involved at all. It is nice and clean. It just takes the square root off, and you have x plus 3, no absolute value needed, is equal to 100. And then I just subtract 3 from both sides. Done. Okay, that's the easiest kind. So if you see this in a problem, you're going to square it, and it's simple. If you see this in a problem, you're going to square root it, and it's not simple because it brings in absolute values, which means you'll have to split it and do 2 equations to solve it. All right. Now, what if, though, you see this but a whole bunch of other junk in the problem? You'll wish you were on a graphing test, because then you could just graph this side, graph that side, see where they cross. It'd be way easier, wouldn't it? Okay, but when you're on the test, there's 2 parts to the test. Remember, you're going to get the first part, which is no calcs, and the second part is calcs. So when you're on the no calc part and you have this kind of a problem, the key is this part right here has to get alone so that you can square root both sides. Okay, but I have to get that alone first, so I have to get rid of this and that. Try it once. See if you get the same thing I get. When you get rid of the 17 and get rid of the 2, try it on your paper right now. Just watch me. Gotta do problems with me. Some of you are writing the whole time, and that's really good. Because your intention will be way better. Came out nasty because it's a 5, -5/2, or -2.5. That's okay though. Now I'm gonna, how do I get rid of square root again? Square root. If I square root on both sides, do I have issues? Yes, I do. When I square root both sides, I will be bringing in absolute values. And then I have to break it into 2 equations. X plus 3 is negative, or square root of -5/2. And is that even possible? Yeah, with imaginaries it is. And I'm not sure it was negative. Yeah, it was. And x plus 3 equals negative of the square root of -5/2. So anytime you have an absolute value, you're going to break it into 2 equations and then solve them separately. All right, I have one awesome question I want to ask. See if I can find it here. All right, this one right here. I want you to write this one down on your paper, and you will need a full sheet of paper for this one. So if you have already started on one side, put it on the top of the back side, because you're going to need a lot of space for this one. Okay, I'm going to hit pause for a second while you start by subtracting 4 from both sides, then divide by 2 on both sides. It starts to get tricky.